Welcome to our final session of Lessons in Leadership. I'm Rachel Bearden. I'm the County Extension Agent Staff Chair here in Hot Spring County. And today we're going to talk a little bit about flexibility in leadership. So within the last year, even our leadership forum this year, flexibility has been a major factor. Since COVID hit in March of 2020, none of us really knew what was going to happen next. And I think across the board with this year's virtual sessions, you've heard from different leaders across the community talk about how flexible they had to be in their planning as things happened this year. They had to be willing to work with what got thrown at them. In the last year, I think we as a society have learned to be more flexible and have had to adjust to things that have happened. And for some people, that can be really stressful. And when you're in a leadership situation, knowing how to adapt to those things that get thrown at us, especially when we aren't expecting it, is really important. Having the flexibility and having the confidence in that flexibility can really dictate how things go, not only for you and your company, but even for your staff. One of the best quotes I've ever heard on flexibility: let no one think that flexibility or willing to compromise is a sign of weakness or even a sellout. And I think that's important to realize. Just because you change your mind or you want to change the way something's being done doesn't make you a weak leader. Sometimes being willing to adapt to that change is what makes people a stronger leader, because they're taking time out to try something new and step out of ledge that hasn't been done before. So when you're trying to assess what kind of leader you are and how flexible you can be, there's some things you can slow down and ask yourself. Some of those things are, am I depending too much on any one behavior? If one thing goes wrong, is that going to tear everything else down? So what are we going to do if that one thing does go wrong? How are we going to adapt to that? Have I considered alternate approaches to solving a problem? While the saying is true, don't fix what's not broken, sometimes there are things that are broken and there are better ways to do things, and we've got to be open to that. Am I willing to try new suggestions or strategies from other people? Sometimes as leaders, we get stuck in a rut that we have to do things our way, and we aren't open to hearing out some of those other perspectives. Can I recognize when changes to my own behavior are needed? Sometimes as leaders, we're the ones that need to change and be willing to see outside the bubble, and it's important that we're willing to do that. How often do you stop and assess the success of a situation? Are you constantly evaluating things, or are you just waiting till that once a year when things roll around to look at the end of the year numbers? If you look at which places are the most successful, most of the time they're the ones who are continually willing to make changes throughout the season or throughout the year, depending on what's going on. And lastly, do you encourage your employees to be flexible? Here at the Extension office, we only have 4 people that work in our office, so our leadership style is a little bit different in things that happen here. But in the 4 of us here, we are all 4 very different. One of the tools that we use here in our office is the True Colors Personality Assessment. We're a small enough office that makes it easier for us to kind of know how to work with each other and be flexible in our own workspace. In those 4 colors, you have orange, which are your energetic, spontaneous, and kind of charming people. Your gold are your punctual, organized, very precise. Green is more of an analytical, intuitive, and visionary. And blue is your empathetic, compassionate, and cooperative. So these are all really important traits, and obviously not one person is just one of those things. But by doing the assessment within our office, I know what my staff is. I know what my staff needs from me in order for them to be successful. For example, I personally am an orange, which means that I function a lot differently than my staff that have more of their gold tendencies, that need things to be more analytical. They need written downs. They need for sure definites. Whereas lots of times I'm more of a spontaneous, will work with things as they happen. And as a leader, it's important that I adjust my style to meet their needs. It's also important that as a manager, I appreciate the versatility of my employees. We all have to work together as a team to make things happen. And I think that's true across the board, regardless of which industry you're in, and how well you as a team can adapt to things and changes that needs to happen. And for that, it's important to foster that flexibility within your employees. If you've got people who want to think outside of the box and they have new great ideas, don't ever be afraid to listen to those. The best ideas normally don't come from the top. They come from the folks who are out there doing it every day. And it's important that those that are on the top take the time to listen to what's working and not working within their systems and make adjustments as they need. Lots of times, if you give your employees that freedom and trust in what they're doing for them to do a good job and let them do it in the way that works, not only will they have a greater sense of ownership in what they're doing, but lots of times they're generally more productive. If people feel valued in what they're doing, they're going to work harder and they're going to be better employees across the board as well. And as a leader, it's important to think about your own leadership characteristics and how those are going to influence the way you lead your team. And that's why I like the True Colors assessment myself, because it lets you understand your own personality style. What are your strengths as a leader and how can you use those to be effective in your organization? But at the same time, what are your weaknesses as a leader? And by knowing your weaknesses, you know what you need to pay extra close attention to so that you can be a better leader for your team and help your team be more successful in the long run. It's also important to notice the styles of others. What helps your team be more successful, and how can you adapt the way that you're leading a program or the way you're leading your team to help them be more successful. And sometimes that means if your style is a lot different than somebody else's, maybe you need to meet them halfway. By having the strong communication, which I think you've heard across the board throughout Lessons in Leadership as well, with your team, they'll know what you need to be a successful leader, but if you know what they need, you can meet them halfway and find a plan that works well for your office and your situation in order for everyone to be more productive along the way. And look for those opportunities to be more flexible. For example, for me as an orange, sometimes it's hard to sit down and nail down what the agenda is going to be and what exactly we need to cover at each one of our staff meetings. But by having that list in front of them, that helps my more analytical employees know what to expect and be prepared to discuss the things we need to discuss ahead of time, and let them plan out and be prepared for those conversations. So while it might not be the easiest thing for me, if I take the time to do it on the front end, that helps my staff feel more involved when we have those meetings and helps everything work together for all of us. It's also important to be willing to take the advice of other people. Sometimes there's different mentors you may have inside of your organization or in the community, maybe even the people you eat breakfast with, the Chamber of Commerce breakfast once a month. Take the time to listen to what they have to say and the advice that they have. Some of those folks may have a lot more experience, maybe in similar situations, even if their industry is a little bit different, but they can offer some insight into things to help you be better, and don't be afraid to make those changes. As you grow in your leadership roles, don't be afraid to help out those younger leaders coming up behind you. That's one of the things I like the most about the Leadership Forum here in Hot Spring County. When you think about statistics, like 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people. We need more 20%ers. And that's one of the great opportunities that's here with the Hot Spring County Leadership Forum, is that we can provide the opportunities to train young leaders and help build the next leadership group of Hot Spring County. And along the way, make sure you check your progress. Check in with your team, check in with the people you're working with, and find out what you can do to be better for them. How are things going in their project? Is there something that could be done that can change the way it works to make it easier for everybody? That can help make their system be more productive and help your project as a whole be more successful. Check in and don't be afraid to make those changes as they need to happen. The magic ratio for any successful relationship, especially between staff, is 3-to-1. For every one negative interaction, there's at least 3 positive interactions to fall back on. Sometimes people do have bad days and sometimes things happen. But if you're the kind of boss that you're willing to give praise easily, you listen attentively, you respect the opinions of each other, and you're not afraid to make changes and adjust things as you go, it can help everything be more successful. When you have that positive relationship with your staff, lots of times not only are they more willing to forgive you when those mistakes happen or you have those bad days and everybody's on edge, but that's when people go the extra mile to make sure things happen, and they're willing to work harder to have those success stories at the end of the day. They're also more willing to accept criticism when it has to be said if you have that positive relationship to fall back on. And that key to a positive relationship with your staff still comes back to flexibility. As we wrap up this year's Lessons in Leadership, I hope that everybody's enjoyed it. I hope you've gone back and watched some of the other videos if you haven't. Those can be found on the Hot Spring County Leadership Forum Facebook page or the Hot Spring County Extension YouTube page. Don't be afraid to reach out if you need links to any of those videos. There's lots of great content out there. And we are looking forward to returning back to our in-person leadership program in fall of 2021. So be thinking about people that might be a good fit for the leadership program. Those applications will be available very soon through the Malvern Hot Spring County Chamber of Commerce. And we'd love to see you be a part of us. Thanks for joining us today.